Hello, hello, everyone. To confirm if you can hear me. So just a minute. All right. Hello, everyone. Good day, good morning, good evening, wherever you're joining in from. My name is Adiola Kolawole Velos NG. Welcome to our weekly webinar series. We hold this every week. ALAS NG, A secretaries, we alternate it on each day. So we're just going to get straight into today's topic, and it is legal mistakes individuals and business owners make, right? And I want to really start with this. We're in an era where business owners, cannot assume that nothing will happen if they stay, if they keep running their business informally. A lot of things have changed, and which is one thing that we're going to talk about in this webinar today. So I'm going to take us through legal mistakes that is affecting you as an individual and as a business owner. We're going to talk about real cases where companies lost hundreds of millions of naira for mistakes that were entirely preventable, and that kind of loss, I think, is one of the most painful loss when you could avoid something and or it could be preventable and you just didn't. So let's ensure our business is not the next case study that we have to be talking about. All right. I just want to let me check the YouTube just so that they can hear me. Okay. All right. So I'm going to continue. So let's All right, so let me share my slide. I don't know if you can see my slide. Please drop in a comment so that I'm sure that my slide is showing. So let me just move to the next slide. Already set the title. Now, now look at the numbers on your screen, or on my screen. So it's on your screen. Sorry. So if you look at the numbers, these are not statistics. These are figures, real figures. Now, if you look at the first one, Ethel. So this case happened, I don't know, the judgment was given around 2022, where the National Industrial Court awarded in total, 161 million thereabout to an executive that was dismissed because the company felt like they could fire him as long as they have done all that they need to do, giving him salary in lieu. They didn't have to give any reason. Yet traditionally, as long as you have done what you need to do in the right procedure, you could. But this particular judgment, judge went out of the traditional way of doing things in Nigeria and set the standard using international best practices. I wouldn't know if it's because it is ETEL, but that was the basis of the judgment, and it says that you can't just terminate for no reason at all, and then the dismissed executive was awarded fine. Now, this is something that if they had properly engaged a legal practitioner or a lawyer, this would have been avoided. Um, would have been avoided. Then the second case, if you look at it, is multi-choice. They had a data breach. We're going to talk about data protection and data breach in later in the webinar. But this happened to them. They were fined a regulatory fine from the Nigerian Data Protection Commission, 766.2 million regulatory fine, because they failed to report a data breach within the mandatory 72-hour window. So it just shows to us how data is now audited as strictly as tax. The final one, if you look at the TV extra production case, now this case is still ongoing. Um, the the copyright is the copyright matter. The Federal High Court awarded money for damages in favor of TV extra production. Of course, the it was appealed by the other party. Now, TV Extra has been granted leave to appeal at the Supreme Court. But you can look at the long years of the battle. This is something that would have been avoided. I can imagine something that started as far back as 2009 and was still in 2026, and the battle is still going on. It's just preventable. It's stressful. The money, the time. These are things that you don't want to go through as a business. So I just decided to start with this for us to see, so that we can see the basis of why legal mistakes you can't afford to make mistakes in your business or as an individual. I had to give that foundation. Now, one of the mistake one, we're just gonna go straight into the mistakes. Mistake one is you running your business without registering it. I know we've I know some of us have heard this over and over again, and but we can't overemphasize it. We keep saying it, keep saying it, keep saying it. Section 83, section 83861, subsection 1 of the Companies and Allied Matters Act. It's a criminal offense for you to carry on a business without being registered. The penalty, there's a penalty of 2 years imprisonment plus daily fines for every business every day the offense continues. And there was a time that CAC also issued, I think around April last year, giving warnings to businesses to go and register and do the needful. So it's important that you register your business if you are running. Of course, that's even number one. I've seen situations there have been situations where, at the point where, so I'm going to give an example. You are into agriculture or into a business that requires the federal government grant, and you want to approach them, and you're opportune to finally get the platform to talk about your business, and it's okay. We want to give you a grant, or you want to give you a loan, interest free, and then they list the requirements to you at that point, that come bring these requirements. And one of the first requirements is your CAC business certificate and your registration incorporation document. Another point, you're trying to run a test kettle, trying to get everything all sorted at the point. Now, yes, you may be lucky that you get it all done within few hours. But what if we've seen situations where there have been delays, there might be delay at the Corporate Affairs Commission, and that how opportunity can be lost, right? And you know that, except for few banks, I'm not sure if any commercial bank do it, but there are few banks that can allow you to open a bank account with the name that you're running with, but it's not registered. But the point is that there are but generally you cannot have a bank account without having a registered business. And so you want to supply goods in so many quantities or you want to offer services to a company and then they're asking you for your account details, and next thing you're sending Adiola Adebimpe or Shilaja GTB, giving them giving them your number. You know, it will only take someone that probably have known you for a long time to do business with you with that account. But there's just a level of credibility that it gives you when you just have it in your business name, and when you just give them the business account and it just has that name. You may just be a very tiny business, but it gives you that. Get what I'm trying to say? So I would urge us not to lose businesses, lose contract, all on the fact that you're not having the business properly registered. It's something that is even easy now. Thank God for technology that you can just do everything on the portal. We don't want to go into how the registration was done back in the day. We're also lucky now, why you can just do your registration by yourself on the portal. So there is no need for it. There's no reason why anyone should not have their business registered. So I just need to give that background, to show that you know, have your business registered, right? So let me use this medium to just explain again the differences between business name and limited liability company. So if you're considering registering your business as a business name, I want you to understand the fact that you're registering your business as a business name. Know fully well that you are not different from your business, and your business is not different from you. So any liability, any debt that is incurred by you and your business is the same. But for limited liability, it has its own legal personality, and so it is totally different. So I'm just going to move to the next one because I'm hoping that we could treat in some questions. So I already said here that banks, agency, serious clients increasingly refuse to deal with unregistered entities, and I've said that before. So I'm just going to move to the next one. Mistake two is CS registration versus trademark. Know the difference. I know that there's still the tendency to mix up and say, as long as I'm registered with CAC, my name can never, I'm already sorted out in every way. No one can use my business, or no one can trade. Now, I've already traded. Some of us still have the misconception that as soon as you've done CAC, it's already protect you at trademark level. But we're here to let you know that that's one mistake you should stop making. As soon as you so we're gonna so if you see the slide, see what you get. CAC, you get the CAC number and legal entity. The trademark gives you the brand ownership, an IP right. The CAC protects your business, your name, business name on CAC register. Trademark, I'm hoping, I mean, this is a public space, so we never, but we're hoping that in days to come, or months to come, or years to come, these two bodies can be consolidated, so that they have a common register. Because it's just interesting that some people have their business registered with CAC, and that exact same name is on trademark, but by different people. So there should be, this is just me chipping this, there should be a system where you cannot do, as soon as you are doing something at CAC, it is flagged by a trademark, and the other way around. So they are interconnected, in a way. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. So they're interconnected, and so there's no issue of even you to be worried that somebody. But how it works now, however, is that when you register with CAC, we're employing you to also do the same at the same time at the trademark. Just combine everything at the same time so that there is no story, that we won't have to start telling stories later on. You know, so you can sue as a registered entity, trademark, you can sue for brand infringement. So so this is for business name, cannot operate legally. That's very okay. This is a mix up somewhere. But trademark registration, competitors can seize. your business. Then annual returns are payable. Then trademark is valid for 7 years and renewable to a period of 14 years. But so in all of this, you see that they are different. None one doing one does not protect. But however, can you know something? However, trademark seems to have seems not seems trademark is stronger. And I'll give an example. There was a time in Ibadan that somebody had a trademark a name, right? And then then somebody else registered exactly the same name with CAC. Now she went ahead to write CAC, saying that this name has been trademarked. And so CAC wrote the person that registered at CAC, that she should come and change the name, or just come and do something to the name. That shows how strong it is. But of course, that would have been avoided if there was just a common register where you can't even use it anyway. As you would have seen the register that, code red, this is already somewhere in trademark, or code red is already somewhere in CAC. And so it's just consolidated. But it happened that they had to write the other person to come change their name at CAC because someone has already trademarked. So it's stronger because we have some people that they're not even registered with CAC and their names are trademark. And so you going to register at CAC, they can write CAC to make it. If you even see at the beginning of, so they wrote it there, but they don't have measures to implement it. If you see it at the beginning of when you open CAC, I think name reservation, there's a part where they tell you that they can reject a name if it's similar to a trademark and something like that. Now they've written it there, but they don't have measures to ensure that it's only when you formally write that they will only be aware. They only use their own records based on CAC records. They don't have trademark records. So that's supposed what would have been better is to have a consolidated record where at that point you won't even give the person the name at all. So I think we'll just move on to the next slide. Now just gonna dwell briefly on here. So this is about um WhatsApp messages. Yeah, no, we're in a very digital age now. Yes, I'm of the but we're still gonna come back to this when it comes to documentation, but still you can't take away the fact that WhatsApp messages can be used as evidences. WhatsApp messages, emails, SMS are fully admissible as evidence and has electronic evidence in all Nigerian court. Why are we saying this is yes, it can be denied, but if it's properly if the person can prove that you really agreed through the WhatsApp message or through SMS and all of that, if person can fully prove it, you can't deny. I wouldn't advise you to sign document or major contract or any contract through WhatsApp. But the reason for this slide is just to ensure that you you don't just come and say I didn't read it, or it's no or it's or it's just WhatsApp, it doesn't make any sense or it doesn't make any meaning. Be careful of the things that you agree to, even if it's through WhatsApp, because sometimes even notices can be served through WhatsApp and it to be admissible. So you have to be careful. We're in the digital world now. We ensure that whatever you agree to, you follow through with it and not try to avoid kind of situation. But I just needed to mention this. It's an evidence. It's email, WhatsApp, SMS are fully admissible. If you replied agree, you're legally bound by every clause, by on every platform. Whatever you said, as soon as they are able to prove it that you agreed to it, they cannot deny such. And this applies both to businesses and individuals. So be careful of what you agree to. Don't just say that it's just WhatsApp and there's nothing there, right? Then so we said that yes. So I'm going to talk about mistake four, mixing personal and business finances. So when you use yes, this I'm going to dwell more on limited liability company because that's the emphasis for this particular slide. Because in the first place, business name, as I said earlier, you're different from I said that like you're different from. Sorry, excuse me. As I said earlier, you're different from. You're not different from your business. Your business is you, and you're a business. So whatever liabilities or anything, even when you pay tax as a business name, you pay the taxes as you pay the taxes as yourself. So I just want to emphasize on when it comes to finance, the finances of limited liability. So your company is a separate legal person. We understand that. But how you treat the funds of the business of the company, let me use the because that is not mixed up with business name. I use the funds of the company matters a lot. So when you use the company funds to pay your personal rent, your children's school fees, or your personal expenses without proper documentation, you're creating the conditions for what we call piercing the corporate veil, or when there's a kind of fraudulent activity going on. That's why it's advisable as a director or as someone that owns a limited liability, ensure you pay yourself salary. Know that you are, yes, pay yourself a salary and not just dip hands into the company funds. The company is a person, a legal person, and it has to account for how the funds are spent or run. So you just cannot take money out of it. So what I would employ us is at the end of the month, your the whole liability, the company has made so amount. Pay yourself a particular, pay yourself a director's, pay yourself a salary, and that way you could fund the things that you need to fund, and even need to take maybe an advance loan. Sometimes employees ask for, can I take an advance salary or what they call it? You can do that yourself, document it. So that proper documentation helps a lot. If your business gets sued, a creditor can has a court to go after your personal assets because you yourself treated the company's fund as your own pocket. And I'm going to mention this. This is one thing that has also affected startups, right? We've seen situations where investors give startups huge amount of money and just cannot understand how the funds have gone down the drain. You know, because they've mixed up the money. When an investor gives you money, it's not giving you as Adiola, it's giving you as your company to do, because they believe in the vision, they believe in what you've sold to them. And then you begin to see startup founders driving cars and paying each salary to themselves. So even when I say you should pay yourself salary, I'm not you can't be paying salary when the business is not profitable. You can give yourself, maybe if you are in operations, give yourself something to using to run the business. So this thing has to you properly get proper legal advice before dipping hands into funds that are not meant to be spent, so that you don't. So you've seen startup that you see that they ought to really have done so well and they just shut down. So where a director takes undocumented withdrawals or loans or a company account, you're also giving yourself, you're also, you know, of course that also has its own tax liabilities as well. Of course, as a director, I said if you're already making profit, take money out of it as salary and pay tax as an individual, and let the company also pay the company income tax. So I'm just going to move into that. So we've already done something that has to do with tax, but I just want to talk about this briefly. Let me move into the next slide, and that's to do with the tax. So there's a whole lot of um, reforms that has gone on with the tax. So I'm not going to dwell too much on the tax because we're still going to hold another webinar on taxes, and we're going to talk about it. However, kindly note, do not make the mistake of not understanding what taxes apply to you, what you're exempted from, when you should start paying, just it's extremely important that you understand how it works. The Nigerian Revenue Service, which now has now replaced the old FIRS, no longer needs to wait for you to default. As I said, the NRS can issue a substitution notice to your bank and deduct outstanding tax directly from your account without prior consent. So capital gain tax, the capital gain tax, we have the withholding tax, we have the common income tax. Now, the interesting thing about it is that capital gains tax, development levy, and common income tax, if your threshold, your annual turnover is not up to 100 million annual turnover, you're exempted from filing, from paying taxes, both capital gains, development levy, and common income tax. So you need to understand that. You need to be advised properly to be able to know that. But kindly note, for professionals in the house that are listening to me, excuse me, if you are a professional in the house, lawyers, accountants, makeup practitioners, you are not regarded as a small company, and so you're still expected to file VAT, to do all of the taxes. You're not regarded as a small company, so you have no exemptions, basically. So let's move on to the next slide. Now, I mentioned when I started out at the beginning that so excuse me. So there is data privacy and the 72-hour rule. There's so many things, so many. I'm trying to remember what happened, but I think someone sent a message. We've seen situations, and this is an example. As a business person, you held the webinar, or you held a particular program, or you did something, a seminar or anything, and you collected people's data for the purpose of registering for the webinar. Yes, you may have put, and you didn't put anywhere that should they anywhere that for them to consent to be for them to allow you to be sending them newsletters or sending them all of those things, and suddenly they register for a particular seminar or program that you organized, and next thing they're seeing your newsletter, or not. That's even maybe okay. They're seeing their newsletter from one of the speakers, an external person that they didn't even understand, how come. Or, for example, somebody applied for a job at your company, and then the person of it didn't get the job, and then you turned all of the contacts to a place where you can be sending them newsletters. No, that's not what the data was for. The data specifically was for they interviewed at your workplace. They didn't get the job, and that ends it. You're not supposed to convert it without their consent with something else. I just need to chip in that. So every business that collects phone numbers, email addresses, BVNs, and any personal data, you have an obligation, to ensure that you have data privacy policy. Um, how many of us have privacy policy in our businesses? How many of us have all of this, the data protection policy? How many of us have it? How do you handle data when there's breach? You have a rule to ensure that you report same, and that's what happened to the one of the companies that we mentioned, because they didn't report within the 72-hour rule, they were fined. So penalties there are a lot of penalties under the Nigerian Data Protection Act 2003, and so you have to be careful. Now, and I noted here, adding a customer to a WhatsApp group. This one I know, well, maybe a lot of us might be guilty of it. Adding a customer to a WhatsApp group without their specific consent is a violation. Sending marketing messages to numbers you collected without the consent evaluation. So you have to be careful. Also, I know I'm just going to say it. Please, when you're sending emails, bulk emails, please ensure that you BCC. That means you're not exposing other people email addresses to everyone. And so when time you want to send to me, Adela Shulaja, you want to send to Adebike Shulaja, you have a particular, you could probably send from alozenja@gmail.com, and then you send to avelalfa@gmail.com, and then you basically see every other person. So it only gets the person only sees who sent it and his or her home mail. But I've seen situation where you just see like 500 mails and you've seen people's personal mails. Please be careful when we are doing that. That could cost you a lot of money. It's a mistake that you don't want to make. You don't want to make it. Right. So we're going to move to the next one. So I've mentioned here, breaches must be reported to NDPC within 72 hours. Penalties are calculated as percentage of gross annual revenue. Do you understand? Money that you're still trying to make sure that it is profitable, and they're going to take percentage of the gross annual revenue. Adding contact was I already said that. The multi choice what we were fined 766.2 million for data protection valuation. You don't want that to happen to you. All right. Gonna move to the next slide. So we already mentioned this at will termination trap by employers. So I want to employers to ensure that within 3 months of your employee starting work with you, please ensure that you give them documentation. It just helps a whole lot in clarifying how you want the business to be run. Sorry, how termination will go. That's one of the clauses, but there are other things. Leave. It defines a whole lot. It defines how it's going to be. Now, as I said, the this particular judgment, the judge when didn't go traditional in the Nigerian way. It used the international best practices, standards. And it says that you cannot just fire an employee for no reason. Termination needs a valid and justifiable reason. Employees entitled to a fair hearing first. Notice period must be strictly observed. And National Industrial Court applied the this convention directly to Nigerian court. So it's important that you can get in the court the judgment and read through, but you don't want to be trapped in that kind. You don't want to lose that kind of money just because an employee is going. Yes, I believe that you would have given warnings, and there has to be a panel for them person to be heard. But ensure that the reason is justifiable. It's not just something that you just want to. Hey, I'm tired now. Won't I give you salary in lieu? That was what Etel was saying at that time and all that. But this matter, so that's one thing. That's one thing we must kindly note. Just want to move to the next slide. The gentleman's agreement is a ticking time bomb. This is an interesting one, and this is very, 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 very crucial. It's a mistake that, earlier I mentioned startups when it comes to how you handle investors' funds, but this is another mistake that businesses, especially those that are like partnership, that are shareholders, that are startups, make. You just you started a company with a very long time friend of yours. You both are like brothers or like sisters, or you started with your sibling, your cousin. Those kind of relationship that you do not envisage any anything going wrong or happening. All partners, shareholders, and joint venture agreement must have signed written formal agreement. Is extremely important. No written contract. Do you want the court to draft terms for you based on conduct, right? Now, I want to emphasize on the shareholders agreement, founders agreement. It protects you a whole lot. You're starting out with somebody, and you don't have what how your roles are not defined. You don't have what happens when there's dispute. Yes, dispute may never occur, but it's a may. But when you have it documented, it just protects you. It may never occur, we agree, but it's better for you to have it because they were because at the end of the day we're humans. When startups start doing so well and huge amount of money start coming in, then you know the true character of an individual. the very person that you believe that never don't really likes money or don't really like money, you'll be shocked at their attitude or at their reaction to certain things. Decision making, you need to define it. There's so many things that founders agreement and shareholders agreement help you with, and partnership agreement depending on the situation. It protects you a whole lot. I cannot, and you see a situation where then one of the partners, one of the directors decides to leave, he or she keeps his shares. You can't do anything to the person. You can't force them to sell their shares when you've not defined how, when it comes to exit, how will it be handled. The shares remains there, and the person will be taking. Person would be whenever the company becomes profitable and you are paying dividend, or there's profit sharing. I mean, it's a shareholder, the person gets dividend without doing anything, in quotes. Do you understand? And it becomes painful for other startup members because they're like, how the person is just earning from where it didn't work for. But these are things that you should have defined at the beginning. So I am emphasizing so much. I can't mention, back to back cases that we have had when it comes to shareholders startups issues, because clearly they got every other thing right, but they didn't get the fact that they need to have a defined agreement right. So please, it's important that this is um sorted out. So as I've already explained, I've already differentiated this already, saying so trader, proprietor, incorporated company. So understanding the differences between this will help you when you're starting out. If you know, definitely a startup, online startup act, for you to even enjoy startup incentives and all of that, you have to be a limited liability. The Startup Act says they can give a business name startup label, which gives you the right to enjoy incentive, but within 6 months, it must become limited liability. So there are some businesses that cannot even run as a business name. You have to compulsorily be a limited liability, and then we now even move it further. You have to compulsorily have certain share capital. So there are different things to this thing, and so it's better that you are advised properly. We've seen situations where somebody wants to do. I'll give an example: travel and tours. Um, you just expect that travel and tours, I could just do it now, and then you go ahead, you register, you reserve a name for business name, you start doing registration, and it queries that please register as a limited liability for 30 million share capital. So this is something that you will have either you check the CAC website to check the threshold, or you get an advice your from your lawyer or chartered accountant or chartered secretary, as the case may be, to advise you properly. But knowing these differences will help you know that as a business name, I'm liable for anything that goes on as a company. So you have to just understand the business you're going into before picking one. But for petty traders, and all that are just starting out and don't have much, you could stay as a business name. I'm not saying you should, but I'm saying just weigh the options and get proper advice before you start out. So basically, we're saying that conclusion, we're saying that your plan today, you're going to, what you're taking back with you is that if your business is not yet registered, you're registering your business so they can operate legally under the Corporate Affairs Commission. Trademark your name, logo, and your trading name with the Nigerian Trademark Registry. As I said, I implore that you do both. As you're doing your sales registration, you're doing the trademark at the same time. Ensure that when you're entering into any business relationships, please draft formal agreements for every partnership, for every shareholder relationship, for every joint venture, no matter how trusted the relationship is. Please ensure that there is every single thing is documented, every single thing, everything that you don't pray to happen or you don't emphasize. Make sure you document it. Separate your personal finances completely from your business account and document every internal transfer. implement a basic data protection policy and obtain proper consent before adding anyone to your mailing list or WhatsApp group. We are not very, we're just still, suing is still not something that is so common, but we can come to the era where, or we're coming to that era where people would start doing it more and more, even down to you adding them to a group that they never asked for. They can sue you for that. So ensure that you get people's consent before you add them to your WhatsApp group. Ensure that you build your HR documentations from the employment contract, staff handbooks, query letters, and disciplinary procedures. Ensure you have all of those things and confirm your complaint tax classification under the NTA 2025, and verify what exemptions apply to your specific businesses. That way, you're saving money and not wasting money on paying unnecessary taxes that you ought not to pay. Basically, so that is um, that is all for today. I'm just gonna give host if there's any question, let's take that. So we're just gonna give it a few minutes taking questions. Okay, so all right, so in the absence of no questions, that'll be the end of today. I hope you've been able to pick one or two things that will be useful for your business, that will save you cost, save your costs, time. I give an example of the case, the first case that we mentioned, and which is the TV extra copyright infringement. From 2009 till now, they are going on a Supreme Court case, and that's a long year. That's long years, and you can imagine the amount of time, money spent, and all of that. So please, let's ensure that we take all of this that has been said seriously and protect our business. Most importantly, you should ensure that you engage your lawyer. I know that legal services, you try to say, I know I could do it myself, but the very money that you don't want to spend at the end of the day, you find yourself spending it when the issue comes. So let's get documents properly drafted. Don't just give. If you are supplying goods, you're doing very high risk contracts. I mean, you're a contractor. You can't just give any kind of agreement that doesn't protect you. So it's important that you do things the proper way, and engage your legal practitioner. So as I said, we're going to have another webinar next week, but it's a weekly webinar series, and we're going to be talking next week about complaint compliance under Kama 2020, what every business owner gets wrong. It's going to be holding on YouTube. You get more details during the course of the week. It's on Wednesdays 12 noon. We go live every Wednesdays 12 noon. A secretaries, A Lozenji, it alternates every week. And thank you so much for joining for today. And I hope it's been valuable and insightful. And we look forward to seeing you next week again. All right. Thank you. And bye.